Hello and welcome back. We have done all the work to set up our Node.js API with Express and Passport. The backend side of our application is now locked down. The security is in place, and we've done some good work to get up to that point. Now, in these next two modules, we're going to shift gears slightly, and we're going to start taking a look at implementing a very basic front-end application with the specific goal of trying to interact with our API from a different perspective. So we've been hands-on in the code in our API, writing our JavaScript in our Node API. We've been interacting with that API through Postman. And so we've seen the very raw request response cycle now. And even though this course is not a front-end course, it's a back-end server-side kind of course, I think it could be quite useful and interesting to implement a simple front end and just see how the integration works and how our API will then eventually interact with some kind of front end, and maybe just look at how the local authentication is going to work. Two short points I wanted to make here. The first one is we are implementing a very simple front end. It's just a basic HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript little application. Nothing fancy. We're not using React or anything like that. That could take an entire course to set that kind of thing up. The second point is we're going to be using the local storage in our front-end browser as a mock way to store the state. Usually this kind of thing will be handled in the state of a React application or more modern application like Angular or anything like that. And to get started, I just wanted to take you through this basic diagram that I've put together. It's a sequence diagram that's just going to explain the overall flow of our front-end application. And on the far left, you'll see that we have the user. And the idea is that the user is going to visit our web application, and they're going to land on the login page. And then between the login and the register page, you'll be able to click between the login and register. If you've landed on that login page, you don't have an account, you can register an account by clicking on the register page. And then that's going to hit our register endpoint. Then once a user is registered, it's going to go all the way back to the login. So once a user has successfully registered an account, they'll be able to then log in with their credentials. And then on that login page, they'll enter their credentials, hit the login endpoint, and then the passport is going to append those cookies on the request. And then we'll be able to have a way of setting this is authenticated state on into the browser. And then this will manage the front end side. If a user has been successfully authenticated, they'll be able to then access the simple profile page, which we'll use to hit our user endpoint just to get that basic information. And the idea here is that profile page is going to be a protected page as well as that protected route. So ideally, we don't want the user to be able to navigate to that profile page and hit the user endpoint without being authenticated. So the basic flow for that profile page is a user is going to try and visit it. We're going to have some JavaScript code that is going to check if that user is authenticated, and we're going to be using the local storage for that. And we'll have a little key value pair in there. If they are authenticated, then we'll let them continue onto the page. And then we'll issue a fetch request to our API to fetch the user's data. Once that user has been returned, then we'll display it on the page. So two important points here. This check authenticated state that we're going to be storing in the local storage, this is not how you'd usually do this on the front end side of things. Usually using applications like React or Angular, you would store the state in the state of those frameworks and manage state in a more sophisticated way. This is just for a demo purposes, so we are going to be using the local storage just as a convenience. But yeah, don't do this in production. This is not how you'd do this in an application that requires any type of important security on it. The second point is, even though the front end, we are implementing a mechanism to kind of lock down this profile page, the real security is on our back end. So even if a user does or is able to get to that profile page by manipulating the front-end JavaScript, if they don't have the correct credentials and that cookie that gets sent back, they'll never actually be able to hit that user endpoint, which is a protected endpoint, unless they have those valid credentials. So we do have this front-end mechanism we're going to implement, but at the end of the day, the back-end security is always going to take precedence and reject any unauthorized requests. So at this stage, for our front-end application, we can just say the mechanism we're implementing is more about user experience, and we will rely on our backend to always just send those 401 or 403 forbidden errors, and that'll just kick the user back to the login page. So this is the prelude to the work we're going to be doing on the front end. We've taken a quick look at the front end architecture, if you will, some important notes that we made just setting the foundation. Let's take a short pause here. In the next lesson, we'll start building out our front end application. I'll see you on over there. Cheers for now.